Hello YouTube, my name is Iron Gut and welcome to another Blender tutorial. Now, this is a tutorial that I was inspired to make recently because I am in a server on Discord for Cabal Mystic style models. Cabal Mystic is a furry model maker and, well, pop culture video game characters model maker that has put out a set of base models that have a consistent style to them. We call it the Cabal Mystic style, the KM style. A community has sprung up around this based off of making a lot of models in their style. And there are basically two types of model makers that make models in the KM style. There are what we call head hackers, and there are true model makers. I am of the latter category, true model makers, but I do know how to head hack. And it is something that I have seen a couple people ask about before on the server, so I decided, hey, this would be a thing that would make for a nice tutorial. So here we are. Now, to start off and explain what I'm about to do, this is what has inspired me to record this video and what I'm going to try and replicate. This is a head hacked model where this body is basically Cabal Mystic's Bowser body that he, of course, produced to make an anthro version of Bowser. It's a common body used for KM head hacks, and as you can see, it's just got a Butterfree head and wings on it and recolored body. This is the nature of head hacks, they're very, very simple and very, very easy to make. Making a full-on model version is a little bit more complex, but I'm going to show you how to do a head hack. Now, to do this, you're going to need two things. First of all, you're going to need, of course, the base model that you want to use for the body, and whatever model for the head you would like to use, along with whatever other parts, for example, in this case, the wings. So usually you can go to the website Models Resource, models-resource.com, or you can use Sketchfab or wherever else you find the models of Pokemon or Digimon or whatever characters you would like to use, and find a rigged model that you want to use for your head hack. In this case, I'm using the 3DS Pokemon X and Y generation model of Butterfree in order to remake this one. And all you need to do is download it and import it in Blender, which is something that I have already done here. Along with that, I have also already imported my KM Snorlax model that I've created, and this is the model that I'm going to use to base and put the head onto. So, to start your head hacks, once you're in Blender, it's all very simple. The reason they're called a head hack is because, again, we're not actually going to be doing any sort of editing to the models. What we're essentially doing is shrinking the head on the body model so that the head becomes a point by being scaled down to 0, 0, 0, and then we do the opposite for the model that we want to use the head on. So we take the Butterfree model and we scale the body down to 0, 0, 0. We keep the head and we just attach that head onto the body. So first, let me show you how to scale down the head on the base body that you're going to use. In Blender, when you open up a model, you're going to have your armature, which is all the bones, and your mesh. The mesh is the thing that we're not going to touch yet. That's what you're going to retexture later, but also, it defines the skin shape of the model. The meta rig is what is often called, or the armature, or bones, whatever people name it. It really doesn't matter. What matters is that it's got this icon that you can see, an orange stick figure. You're going to click on that so that it's highlighted and go up here to change the mode from object mode to pose mode. Edit mode is where you would go to actually edit the skeleton by doing things like deleting bones or moving them around without actually changing how they affect the mesh. But because we want to affect the mesh, we're going to go into pose mode. And when we go into pose mode, we can select any of the bones on the armature we want. In this case, the head is the only one that's going to matter. We have the head selected, and we're going to go to the scaling tool right over here on the toolbar. And we're going to take this, and we're going to scale that head all the way down to 0, 0, 0. And that makes the head all the way down to a single point. Now, in this case, that doesn't really work all that well because of the way I made the Snorlax model. So we're also going to move it a little bit. So we're shifting it upwards using the move tool. And essentially, all you need to do for a head hack is move around the bones so that they make the body look kind of headless horseman, essentially. So that the body looks okay without a head. This could take some trial and error, but not that much. As you can see, I literally did it in the course of seconds. That's all we need to do right there. Now, what we do next is we're going to turn on the Butterfree model. We're going to turn off that for the sake of clarity for now. And in the Butterfree model, you can see there's also the armature and the body. In this case, we have a little bit more of an issue because the way things are parented. We're going to go to, well, first off, we're going to select the armature, and we're going to go into this right here so that we're no longer applying the textures. That way we can see the bones a bit better in see-through mode, which you can turn on and off via that icon. Go into pose mode, and this is where it gets a little bit more complicated because the head is attached to other bones. We're going to need to detach that. So, you can see here, we're going to go into edit mode first. When I go to the bone icon with the armature selected and the head bone selected, you can see what the head bone is connected to, and it's connected to, in this case, the spine bone. We're going to disconnect it by clicking on the X button. Now the head bone isn't actually attached to the rest of the body. We're going to do the same thing with the wing bones. Now, there are 4 wing bones it looks like. I want to see if there's a common root that they all share just to make things a little bit easier. And it looks like no. Because I see 4 different sets of dotted lines here, that's the way the bones are connected. It looks like all 4 of those bones are connected directly to the spine bone. So I do need to remove them individually. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now we have the head bone and all those wing bones, which they've called feelers for some reason, disconnected from the rest of the body. So now what we can do is we can go back to pose mode now that we've disconnected those other bones and find the most base bone there is, which is, in this case, PM001200 Butterfree. Doesn't really matter what it's called, just that it's the bone that all of the other bones are connected to, except for the head bone and the feelers, or rather the wings. And what we do now is we reduce that down to 0, 0, 0. And then we move it so that it also doesn't look like anything is weirdly spiking. So there you go right there. Now we have just the head of the Butterfree. So, now what's to do? Well, quite simple. Actually, in this case, it's a little bit more complex because we have 2 things that we want to separate. The wings we want to attach to the backbone, and the head we want to attach to the head bone of the Snorlax, or what was the Snorlax will be our new Butterfree. So we're going to need to separate the 2 things. How do we do that? Well, we go into edit mode on this armature, and we're going to select all of those wing bones right here. Don't worry that the body is back because we're in edit mode. That means that all of those things that we did in pose mode to scale the bones down, those aren't turned on right now when we're in edit mode. Those are turned on when we're back in pose mode and in object mode. We're selecting all those bones there, and we go up to the armature menu, and we're going to separate bones, which puts them into a different armature. As you can see right over here, they're now part of armature.002, and we can choose to select them or the current head bones. Then we do the same thing with the mesh. We go to edit mode, and now we're going to select all of the wing bone, or the wing mesh. There's an easy way to select them all by doing that. Doesn't really matter all that much, just matters that you have all of it selected. And you go to the mesh menu now, once you're in edit mode, separate, selection. And now you can see the wings are separated from the rest of the body. We're going to do this where we change their parent to be the other armature. And we do that by selecting the wings. And in this menu, which is the properties of the object, the orange square, we change its relations parent from the armature number 1 to armature number 2, which, as you know, are the wing bones that we separated before. So now, what we can do is we can take the wings and move them around independently from the head. So, now we just need to move everything into position. We take the head. We're going to turn off that so that we can see things a bit better. And in object mode, we're going to move this up until the head is about where we want it. We're also going to be able to scale it so that it matches. Adjust it right about there. That looks like it's appropriately sized and appropriately placed. Let's turn on the textures just to see. Yeah, that looks good. Now we're going to do the same exact thing with the wings, where we take them and we move them up in object mode and back a bit. That way they are close, a little bit further, right there. And I would say let's expand them a little bit more. Maybe not that much. Maybe just 1.5 times. There we go. And shift them down so that they're connecting in what looks to be the proper place. Have them right there. There we go. And now, what we do is we're going to take these armatures and in their object properties, remember the relations parent? We're going to change their parent now to the meta rig of our Snorlax model. So we're going to do that right there. We're parenting that, and the parent type is not going to be an object, it's going to be a bone. And then we choose the bone that we want to parent it to. In this case, we want to have it be connected to the neck, if there is one. There we go. The neck. And the reason why we're parenting it to the neck instead of the head is because, remember, we shrunk the head down on the previous one. If we parent it to the head, that's going to shrink it down instead. So we want to connect it to the neck instead, because the neck is not shrunk. So there we go. We parent it to the neck, and now we just need to move its position again so that it matches up. So negative 90 degrees. There we go. That looks nice. This one, again, parent to MetaRig 01. Parent type is bone. We're going to parent that to the spine bone. because that's the bone that we want them to be moved by. Let's move things into position again. There we go. And now we just need to change the textures on Snorlax, which we can do that in a couple different ways. We can go to texture paint mode right here in Blender, and we can recolor things by going into this texture file here, which the KM Snorlax body, that's the one that the Snorlax body is using. Usually they're labeled very nicely. You can also tell which one it is by going and selecting the Snorlax body, and in this menu here, which is the red material properties sphere, choose the material and see what its base color has as its texture. In this case, you can see it's KM Snorlax body. So that's the one we want to use. In that drop down up there, KM Snorlax body. And then we just use the paintbrush and, you know, I'm going to grab the purple and just, oh, my strength is down because that's the way I had it before. I also have my mode to line. Don't worry about that for now. But make that all purple, and the body is now purple. It's a little bit off, so we'll pick a darker area and recolor that. Now it's purple. We can also do, the wonderful thing about texture paint mode is that we can grab, here's the blue, and we can actually use the paintbrush and texture paint mode here on the model screen itself. So we want to make the hand that color. Bam, we can paint it directly on the model. I usually don't recommend doing this way because, as you can see, it only gets what's showing to you. So it might look great, but then you'll end up with, you know, hidden creases that you missed, and you'll be, you know, rotating around forever and ever, and you'll still never get that little bit that's deep in between the fingers or someplace. You want to do it on the actual screen here, because bam, bam, now I've got the entire hand. Similarly, you end up painting areas that you don't want to paint at the same time. So let's get those parts back to normal by doing this and coloring those parts back in. But yeah, whoop, a little bit there on the legs. It's also very processor intensive sometimes when you don't realize, you know, that you're painting this part of a leg, but you're also painting another body part behind it as well. It's just really annoying to paint things on the model like that. But it is useful. It does serve its uses. And once you're done, all you really need to do is just save everything, and you can use the model. So in this case, you can see I will go to the main meta rig here, and I'll choose pose mode. And for example, now I will bend him forwards, and you can see the wings move with his back. Similarly, you see the head is moving as well. In this case, I'm moving his chest bone, which in retrospect, I should really attach those wings to the chest bone, but this is really an example of a head hack, so this is just to give you the basic idea. Which I think you've got. At least you should have the idea by now. That's how you make a head hack in Blender. I'll show you guys how to make the proper model later on. But for now, that's where I'll leave you. And yeah, that's Head Hacking 101. Enjoy.